Welcome back, everyone, to the Madness and Grace podcast. Today, it is Matt and I once again going over some of the trending mental health topics. And since we're nearing the end of the year, I thought it would be really cool and insightful to talk about sadness, and not just sadness, but anxiety, depression around the holidays. So how's it going, Matt?
Going well. How are you doing?
Good. And Matt, today I just kind of wanted to talk about what people may refer to as, I'm putting quotes up, the holiday blues, and why people are so affected during the holidays. And obviously mental illness doesn't have a schedule. It can hit anyone at any time of the year, but we definitely see a big increase in sadness and loneliness around the holidays. I saw a statistic that said 3 in 5 people report feeling extra lonely during the holidays, which is a lot of people.
Yeah, that is a lot of people. I saw an APA study that came out that said 38% of people report that they feel overly stressed during the holidays, although I think that's probably a little low. But yeah, 3 in 5, that's a lot of people. I know, for people with mental health problems, holidays are often kind of trigger events for the negative symptoms of their illness to pop up for a variety of reasons. But then also just people in general, you're right, they'll feel lonely, they'll feel overly anxious, they'll even get very, very down. And there's a variety of reasons. I think there's kind of different subgroups of people, but it's unfortunate because holidays are supposed to be times where we celebrate events, sometimes religious events, sometimes historical events, and also times we're supposed to spend with our families to enjoy them. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, they aren't good times.
You just kind of mentioned a few of the common triggers. I was going to ask you, what are the main stressors that contribute to this kind of lonely feeling? And I know, there's like obvious ones like financial stress, how am I going to provide for my family during this time? But what are some of the most common triggers that you would say besides shopping and religious events?
Right. Yeah, it depends on the group because there are different constituencies. So first, like the people that we deal with here at the Hope and Healing Center that come to us that have mental health problems, the holidays can be a very stressful time, a very difficult time because it alters their regular daily routine. So they get into a routine that's very, helpful for them and calming. And then holidays can, even when we enjoy them, can be very chaotic. You're thrown together with a lot of different people. You're eating different kinds of foods. You may have to travel or people travel to you. So there's a lot of change in that. And so, change in and of itself can be very stressing for people that have mental health problems. For people that don't have mental health problems, there's all kinds of things going on at holidays. I mean, let alone the fact that our daily activities change, but we're thrown together with our relatives and friends that we perhaps don't see very often. And we may not see them very often because we may not want to see them very often. And so, we are put together with people and, then we discuss topics and bring up old problems and old wounds are opened. And so that can be very difficult because people feel like, well, I need to be with my family, even though I don't get along with my family. And so you get a lot of that. And then, like you said, there's financial issues. I mean, holidays can be very expensive. It's a very materialistic world. And I think we allow that to kind of draw us off when really what's important is that we're just with people we care about. And I think that, it's an interesting time. We get so caught up in the tradition and the revelry and the expense and all of that we don't really take time to say, well, what would be an enjoyable holiday for me? What would I like to do? And I think on the lonely side, you do have people that they don't have family. They've lost family. Certainly those who've lost someone, the holidays are a reminder that they're not there at the table. Or they don't have a family that they can go visit. Maybe they live far away. Maybe they're estranged from their family. And so they may spend the holidays alone, literally alone. And so there's a lot of that as well. So it is for a time that's supposed to be so joyous, it's a very difficult time for a lot of people, a lot more people, I think, than we really give it credit for.
Even that 3 in 5 people, loneliness doesn't equate mental illness, but
right, absolutely.
People are still just extra lonely during this time. And I've definitely witnessed some unhealthy coping strategies over the holidays. Particularly I have addiction in my family, and something that can happen is to compensate for all of the holiday stress or anxiety. People are using these unhealthy coping mechanisms like alcohol consumption or, overeating and, other substance abuse as well. So I'm curious to know if you have any coping strategies that are healthy for people instead of kind of resorting to, sure, it's a coping mechanism, but it's not the healthiest.
Right. Yeah, I think, alcohol tends to be the worst thing that happens at holidays. It usually never goes well. I mean, even if the majority of people there are using alcohol in a non misuse way,
Yeah.
somebody always overindulges. What I would say is this, that a person really honestly needs to sit down before a holiday ever comes and make a decision or consider or think about what would be an enjoyable holiday for them, not to get caught up into the what people expect of you or what tradition says. Or I remember a family, for instance, just again, this is a little bit outside, it's related, but so I remember a family that I dealt with several years ago that had an older son that was autistic, and so change is very difficult for that. And when I say older son, I mean like in his late 20s. Very difficult for him, but their family just expected them, their extended family, to travel with him and have him there, and he would always get upset and kind of act out, and it would be a miserable time. And I told the mother, I said, why do you do that? Why don't you just have your holiday at home with your husband and your son? Wouldn't that be better? She goes, oh, that'd be wonderful. I go, well, that's what you should do then. Why? Well, this is what other people expect. Well, what's best for your son? What's best for your immediate family? So I think everybody needs to sit down and say, hey, you know what? Every year our holiday is a disaster, or every year I'm miserable because I go and it reminds me of this. I'd really rather spend, and I'm not saying isolate yourself. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I would rather spend time with my friends, or I'd rather just spend time with my immediate family, my husband or my wife or what. I mean, that's okay. I think people need to give themselves permission for that. I think the other thing they need to say is, well, what are the regular triggers that happen every year? There's no reason for me to get into a discussion with, Uncle Joe about that land that we bought together and I lost a bunch of money on it. That's not going to be resolved. I have to tell myself that I'm going to go there just to be with my family. I'm not going there to try to fix 20 years worth of problems. And so you have to be honest with yourself about what the issues are. And, a lot of times it's not what you do, but it's how you react to what others do. And you have to be the bigger person. Why are you going to spend time with your family? Why are you going to celebrate this holiday? Is it for religious reasons? Well, then that should be your focus. The religious reasons. Your focus should not be on, well, I'm going to really get one over on cousin Lulu this year because, last year she called me this and I got the zinger for her. I think you have to be honest with yourself. And I think if your holidays are normally a difficult time, you have to do, as you just said, and that is, how am I going to cope with that? If normally I'm very lonely or I'm very anxious, what am I going to do to cope with that? That increase in those. And I'm not going to use negative strategies like overeating or overspending, which is another common one, or using alcohol or whatever. I mean, what am I going to do? And one of the things you might do is you might reconstruct what your holiday is going to be like. Well, normally I get really upset because I'm around 50 people and I don't do well in those situations. Well, this holiday, I'm just going to have 3 people around me or whatever. And so but you got to do this ahead of time. You don't do this when you're on the airplane on your way. So I think you have to ask yourself, if you're finding that the holidays cause you significant amounts of stress or depression or loneliness or whatever, these kind of negative emotions, I think you have to ask yourself, what is it about the holiday that does that? Is it a reminder? If you find it's a reminder of loss, well, then I would recommend that you seek out some professional care to deal with your grief, but also maybe you add into your holiday a remembrance opportunity for that person that you lost. I mean, it's all about the strategy that you develop to deal with what's going to happen. And typically, this is not a surprise when this happens. This has
Hmm.
happened time and time and time again. So you're really, it's really only, it's your issue if you just ignore it.
Yeah.
And so just, ask yourself how it normally goes. And hopefully there is a pleasurable part of it and you want to focus on that and you want to try to maximize that.
Just my own personal tip to, maybe people out there who think, well, I don't have a ton of family. I don't have a lot of people to see. Put social media away for the holidays. I feel like every episode we talk about how social media is negatively impacting, but I know it can be hard to be on Facebook and see, wow, so and so's got this huge family and they are at Thanksgiving and I don't have anyone, when in reality, I'm sure they were all fighting around the dinner table. So nothing,
Right, right. You have to
nothing on
remember
social
none of
media.
that's all phony. No, nobody's
Yeah.
life is a Hallmark movie.
Social media will make you think that other people do have a Hallmark
Right,
movie.
absolutely. And, they say that comparison is the thief of joy. There are good aspects of your life and good aspects of your family, and you want to focus on that. And there are people that would love to have the family you have or the relationships you have. Be content with what you have. Don't focus on others and miss what you have.
And that's my tip. If you can't be on social media without it getting you to a dark spot, put it away for November and
Absolutely.
December. That's
I think that's a great suggestion. I think it's a great suggestion to just say, hey, when I'm with my family, at a minimum, I'm going to put the phone away. I'm going to turn my phone off, put it in another room so I can actually be present with my family. Another thing I would say, sometimes it's not being with family, it's the length of time you're with family.
hmm
I mean, it's one thing to go have a meal together. It's another thing to spend 3, 4 days together. So if what you do is as you're evaluating your previous holiday experiences, if you find that, we all were getting along great at first, but by the third day it was a disaster,
Yeah.
shorten your stay. I mean, they sound like kind of goofy little things, but if you plan accordingly ahead of time, you can make your holiday experience really a wonderful experience.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I wanted to release this episode kind of early in the holidays, early November, so that people can have a plan and they can balance expectations for themselves and their loved ones. And Matt, you and I did an episode on, setting boundaries with family and friends a few episodes back, but you mentioned having a plan moving forward through the holiday season. How can we encourage people to have those open conversations? I know it can be scary to tell a family member, well, I want to come for 2 days instead of 5, or,
Right.
whatever, without hurting someone's feelings. How can someone go about those conversations?
Number one, you can't own other people's issues,
Hmm.
and so, I know a lot of families, they have to spend the holidays at more than one place, try to make it all fair for everyone, or like, oh, well, you had them they were with you, you went to theirs last Thanksgiving, now you're supposed to come to ours, it's only fair. Well, you know
Yeah.
what? Life isn't fair. And so, what you have to do is you have to say, who do I consider my most immediate family? Who is it that I want to spend this holiday with? Who do I want to celebrate? I mean, let's remember what these events are. Who do I want to celebrate Thanksgiving with? Who do I want to celebrate Christmas with? I mean, who do I want to these are celebratory experiences. I mean, who do I want to be with? And if you say, oh, well, I want to be with my, it's just a family of a couple and a child, well, I want to spend it with them. Okay, well, great. Well, there's nothing wrong with you doing that. And if other people are upset by that, you can't own that. The other thing you have to do is you have to remind yourself that you don't have to convince them that you're right. And so you also don't have to try to explain to them where you end up hurting their feelings of why you only want to stay for 2 days. You just, for your family this year, 2 days is what you think is best, and you don't have to justify that in any way. And I think also the first person you have to set boundaries for yourself, and so if every year you get an argument with your uncle over politics, the boundary you need to set for yourself is simply not going to have a conversation with your uncle about politics or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it doesn't matter what he says,
Yeah.
and you're just not going to be drawn into that. Believe me, both will benefit from that. And so I think but you also have to set boundaries for your family. I mean, if you have a family member that just absolutely insists that you be there this year because last year you were somewhere else, and that's just not going to happen, you don't ruin your holiday and family relations just so you can make everything fair, because you never can make everything fair.
Yeah.
And one of the things you have to affirm to your family members is that just because you're not present with them doesn't mean you don't care for them,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you need to make sure that you let them know that I'm not going to be able to be there this year, or we're decided to go over here, but I want you to understand how much I care for you and how important you are to me. And this isn't a reflection of that. This is
Yeah.
just a reflection of kind of trying to maybe minimize the stress in our family or whatever, or financial, or again, they don't have to accept it, but you just need to put it out there for them. And I think that's the biggest thing I see at the holidays is people, they just don't give themselves permission to make decisions for themselves. They
Without
have
making everyone else happy. Yeah.
older, right, exactly, older family members, or traditions have to be followed, or somehow you damage the family or hurt people. That's just, we got to let that go. I need to be happy. So for instance, I have 3 adult children. If one of my adult children says, well, I'm going to go spend the holidays with my fiance's family, or I'm going to go spend the holiday with friends, I should be happy that
Mm-hmm.
my loved one is happy
Yeah.
at that holiday,
Mm-hmm.
not that, well, they didn't come spend it with me. That means that they don't love me. I mean,
Yeah.
that's my problem. That's not their problem.
Right. We've talked about triggers and we've talked about coping strategies and how to kind of have a plan moving forward. But obviously, seeking help and resources for your mental health during the holidays can be crucial for a lot of people. And it can be really hard because clinics are closed, your therapist may be on vacation, or you just don't have the financial capabilities for mental health care. And I just wanted to highlight our Hope Line, which is open every single day, even through the holiday season, which I just personally think is so great because I don't know how many other resources are open on Christmas Day or anything like that. So I just wanted to highlight our Hope Line. And as always, I will leave that phone number in our show notes. And we highly encourage everyone who just needs someone to talk to or needs a referral out to use that resource.
Yeah, a few things I'd say is, for those of you who do have a mental health problem and you're managing it with medication, make sure you have your medication. If you're going to go
Yeah.
out of town, or the holidays are coming where it's harder to get a hold of, a pharmacy may be closed, make sure you have enough medication. You may need to call your doctor now to make sure you have those prescriptions in, and that's just tremendously important. I think the other thing is, if you are a person, the Hope Line, something like that is wonderful. I think if you're a person who does struggle over the holidays and you have a therapist, you might talk to your therapist about some additional tools or coping, but you also might say, is there any way, if I have an emergency, that I could get a hold of you?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes just knowing that you have that available is very reassuring
Mm-hmm.
to you. And I think another thing is, for those of us who maybe don't have a mental health problem, and there are certain struggles, I think it's not a bad idea to have a conversation with another loved one about how you want to deal with this year. I mean, a trusted loved one, like,
Yeah.
hey, maybe your brother, hey, we're not going to go and hang out at, grandpa's house this year because it always really makes the kids wild, and it always ends up being, so we're just going to have it Thanksgiving or whatever, just for our family. What do you think about that? What do you think if we did that?
Yeah.
Just to kind of get that kind of feedback, so you can get some understanding of how others are going to perceive that. Sometimes that's helpful to kind of know, as opposed to just kind of drop a bomb on them, like, oh, by the way,
Yeah.
we're not coming, kind of a
Mm-hmm.
thing. So, I think, like we've said this whole time here, I think it's all about preparation. And if what's been done in the past always ends up bad, and you always come out of it not feeling well, it's going to happen again if you don't
Mm-hmm.
do anything. There's just not going to be a year where it just goes wonderful if it never goes wonderful.
Yeah.
So, take responsibility for yourself, and you don't have to make it wonderful for everybody. Think about what would make it wonderful for you.
Well, thanks, Matt. And thanks to everyone listening. Once again, we're going to leave all of our resources in the show notes. That's all we've got today. And happy holidays. I know it's weird to say happy holidays after all of that, but still.
But they
Thanks,
should
Matt.
be happy holidays.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.